Computer here. There we go. All right. Hi, Abid. How are you? Abid, you gonna unmute yourself?
Hey, how are you? I'm with PJ right now.
Hey Bruce, how's
Hey,
it going?
PJ, how you doing? So let me tell you a little bit about who's on the call now. Chris O'Connell is probably the principal behind this. Chris is a real estate investor and a tech sales guy based in Miami, but he's got interests in Florida, Texas, Quebec, and Ontario. All right, so he's a young guy, but is well connected and well versed in what we're doing. And Chris is somebody I really trust, and he's involved with the tiny house movement like I am and many other aspects. So he really is the principal mover. And it's my view, this is a group. And just before I start, did I start recording this yet? Sorry about that. I'm not getting a whole lot of sleep these days. But it's my view that Chris should be our president, if you will. We got to have somebody as the president, and Chris has a lot of experience, so I nominate Chris. I won't ask for a seconder. And so Chris would. Okay, thank you very much, PJ.
Sorry.
So anyway, my take on it is that we do need somebody younger, obviously, than me, and somebody to take initiative and set the pace for all of us. That's one thing. The next thing I'm going to say is I don't have all the answers. I think Victoria knows, and certainly Ovid and PJ know, and I think Tina Ray knows now, and Katie does too, that the very first teeny tiny town that sort of came into being was completely by accident. It was just one of those organic things. It grew. And if I had the ability and the right to add more tiny houses and more workshops and more of everything in that location, teeny tiny town one, we could have 30 tiny homes. We could probably have 50 of them and 30, 40, 50 workshops. So it just kind of happened. And so Chris and I have been talking for some time that it just works. And at least I think it does. And so maybe we're going to have more than one teeny tiny town. And so we went looking, and I didn't actually find the site. I think you know that, Chris. I didn't actually find this particular site in Metcalfe. It was found by my wife, Dawn. She is a bioscience researcher, and she has a lot more patience than I do. I have none. And she's a bioscience researcher, and so she spends a lot of time, and energy looking at different kinds of properties. She's very good at it. And she found this site, and she actually found it for one of our daughters. One of our daughters was visiting from Calgary with her husband and their two little children, a beautiful little boy and girl. And Dawn found it for them, and they weren't interested for different reasons. And then I said, "Aha, I have an idea that might even be better." So if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to do just a quick round the clock here introduction. Chris, why don't you take 10 or 15 seconds to introduce yourself, and then we'll go to you, Victoria, because you're on the top of my screen, and we'll go to you, Katie, after that. So Chris, you first.
No, thanks, Bruce. You introduced a lot of it there. Been working with Bruce for almost 3 years now, and we've been working on different types of models, but this one just seems like, especially right now, the demand for it, where housing is, seems like a really good project to get underway. So looking forward to working with everybody here on the call.
And I think I said Victoria next.
Hey, I'm Victoria. I am living in the teeniest tiny home over in Dunrobin, and I'm a massage therapist looking to expand my roots in the whole tiny home community business and do our virtual.
Yeah, and Victoria is very typical of somebody who might be interested in a teeny tiny town. She has a successful registered massage therapy business, and she embraces the tiny house movement and motto. I think everybody on the call knows the tiny house motto is less house, more life. Okay, Katie, over to you.
Hi there. Okay, what do? I just study cultures and humans. I've been a high school teacher for 23 years, and then moved into more of a spiritual lens and really looked to find the commonality, the unifying piece with humans. We're actually pretty simple. We just complicate things. And so I'm really curious around, I think, I'm happy there's some people on here to really, I just collect feedback. I just collect a lot of information. And I'm really curious about changing the culture and changing the way that we interact as humans. So
Right.
a kind of,
And I think
yes.
you explained it to me a little differently. And that was that Katie is looking, as so many people are, for some kind of a different way forward. One of the things I'll show you, I'm going to share a few slides with you. You guys can never have a Zoom call with me without having a few slides, all right? So I apologize in advance, but I have a picture of you too, Katie, on the slide deck, but I won't show that unless you want me to. But you know, Katie, one of the things that I did when I was coming back from this farm, actually, when I went to look at it with you and Tina Ray and others, is I drove down the Queensway, which is a major highway in Ottawa, and there was this huge sign saying "Rent here," connecting the city to nature. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. I'm driving down a major highway. There is a light rail system being installed right next to this highway. It's a major highway. And there's this building with balconies, like literally hanging over the highway, looking onto the light rail system. And the sign says connecting city to nature. I would have burst out laughing if it wasn't so pathetic. And I think that the way you explained it to me is that we're all, I think everyone is, perhaps at least on this call, looking for something different. All right, Tina Ray, why don't you have a go? No, you have to unmute yourself. You sound really great, but if you unmute yourself, it'll be even better.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Ray. I found Bruce because I was interested in tiny homes, and I talked to the builder of Humble Creek Homes, and he put me in touch with Bruce. So I'm looking at different ways of living that bring community together and just promote a healthier way of living than the isolation and the loneliness that we're experiencing on our culture. So I'm happy to be a part of this community we're creating here.
Awesome. Elisa.
Well, I am working with Bruce currently, helping him with his marketing a bit. And I just started learning about this tiny home community, and I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah, to be fair to Elisa, she started learning about this community this morning. She works with me. She didn't say it. She's a young mom. And I hope you don't mind me saying you're on your own.
Yes.
With two small kids, beautiful children. Let's see. Okay, Jeanette, you're next.
Well, I'm here in Ottawa and I'm part of Katie's community. I own a retreat planning business where I work internationally, working with many people all over the planet, helping them bring their dreams to reality by hosting retreats. And what I'm most curious about here is to have community, to build community locally here in Ottawa and to be part of something that moves towards just a better way of being and a better way of living. And tiny homes just make me smile.
Simply put, and I have to say, Jeanette, that in 2017, I came to Ottawa from Australia. I lived in Australia for many years, and I came here in 1983, which is a long time ago now. But in 2017, Ottawa, I think, had a bit of a vibe going on. Technology was doing well, employment was up, and there was a certain amount of buzz. And then the pandemic hit. But it isn't just the pandemic. For some reason or other, Ottawa, I think, has really lost the vibe. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. I think I'll bet you there's 30,000 people, not that we could put 30,000 people on the farm, but I'll bet you there's 30,000 people in Ottawa that are like you and everybody else looking for something different. And Shopify, for example, is a big tech company, right? I mean, for Canada, they pulled up stakes and moved to Toronto, right? So Ottawa is really suffering in so many ways. Milan, we had a really fun time at Hammond Hill. Talk about yourself.
I met Bruce, I think, 3 days ago. I went to visit a tiny home in Hammond Hill. I've been entertaining the thought of moving into a tiny home. I'm slowly, by step, downsizing. I am kind of retired. I take contracts, but I'm really wanting to downsize so that financially I can have less home, less expenses, and really invest in the things that I want to do. I feel like, I've worked hard in my career, and there are all sorts of things that I keep saying, oh, I'd like to do this. And I'm a project person, and I've got a lot of projects that are unfinished, but I've also got ideas of things that I would like to do. Small business of trying to develop, and so, I mean, the ideas don't stop. And actually, Bruce, I didn't share this with you, but I have a friend in Montreal, and we had talked about putting 3 of us, buying a piece of land, putting 3 of us with tiny homes.
Wow.
But they just, they don't pass to the action. And I'm a kind of person that I get an idea, I like the idea, and I've got to pass to action. So I was absolutely thrilled to meet Bruce, and I'm also very, very thrilled to meet all of you and to feel that there's a shared interest in this exciting project. I'm very sincere about that.
That's so beautifully put, and I love praise, so you can continue.
Okay.
But you know what men really like, right? Most people think men like a certain thing, couple of things, but what they really like is praise. They do. There, breaking news. So Milan, you didn't say as well that you have a wonderful international background. Milan shared with me, I hope you don't mind again, she was born in Cairo, lived in Lebanon, came to Canada as a little girl, is very French, obviously speaks more than one language. And I was really impressed. You didn't mind going into a forest with somebody who had just met me. Must have a
Yeah, but I had 2 very protective dogs, as you recall.
Yeah. Well, I must have a trustworthy face, I guess.
Yes, you do. You do.
Hasti, I haven't met you before, but I've heard obviously about you from the Reverend. Tell us more about yourself.
Hi everyone, and hi Bruce. Thank you for having me. Like, I'm part of the Katie's community, like I get to know Katie while I was following my own passion around coming together, all humans, and creating a new way of living together in harmony with nature. As soon as I get to know like Katie, and we share this shared passion, and then we get to know that like Bruce also, like a very short introduction of me. I moved to Canada 2018, and I moved from business to life coaching, and then in the last 2 years, like study and learn about Tantra and way of being more connect to life and source, and how I can. And my mantra these days, let's say the last year, is about learning how to be in service of humanity through self, and create a more beautiful world with this perspective. And I'm so grateful to be here, and so excited for Tiny House, which I think is kind of a dream come true for me, for my passion. And yeah, that's me.
How do you say your first name?
Hasti. You pronounce it
Okay,
properly.
okay, perfect. Yeah, that was a wonderful introduction and good to meet you. We have a lot of people on the call here who are what I call other directed. You know, in other words, you know, money's important because as Katie and I talked with Tina Ray, money is energy, right? I mean, it provides energy to do good things. But being other directed is also, I think, very common to this group. Now, next you're going to meet Ron and Michelle. Ron and Michelle, tell about your experience with the you're actually living in a tiny home.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys. Yes, back in, I guess, early spring, we got in contact with Bruce. Probably one of the best contacts we ever made. And anyways, we were looking for a tiny house. Michelle was totally against it. But anyways, I persuaded her. I said, we want to travel. We want to do things. Let's see what the cost is and the biggest one we can get. So anyways, yes, we have purchased our first tiny home. We love it.
We love it.
On Bruce's property. He's been amazing with us. And yes, if you want to drop by and have a visit anytime, come and see it. It is the biggest one that Humble Creek do build at this moment. We're waiting for the next model, of course, to come out. But yes, we are very, very happy.
Yeah, and I'll show a picture of your tiny home. It's actually humongous. I think it's 35 feet long, and I think it has almost 500 square feet of living space. So it's on a triaxle trailer. Abed, are you still there? You have to unmute yourself, brother.
Hey, yeah, we're still here.
Okay, say hi.
Hey, how are you?
Hello.
So this is myself. My name is Abed. I'm the owner of Fanan Custom Cabinetry. And myself and PJ, we pretty much build kitchens, closets, cabinetry, that kind of stuff out of Bruce's tiny town.
Well, what happened was Abed is eating the Barndominium. You know, the Barndominium was the first teeny tiny town in Dunrobin. And he came in and he just needed 1,000 square feet. Then he needed 2,000 square feet. And then, you know, he's like the blob that ate Cincinnati, which was a horror movie made in the 50s. So nobody here remembers it except me. So when I went onto this farm, which I'll show you pictures of in a minute for those of you who haven't seen it, there was just this ginormous barn. And now, mind you, it needs a lot of work, but it's the Barndominium is about 4,000, maybe 4,500 square feet, and this one that I'll show you goes forever, and then it has kind of an L shape to it. But I don't know exactly how big it is, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's north of 10,000 square feet.
Well, that's amazing because it's looking like the way we're expanding and the way the orders are coming in hot, we're going to need to upgrade our machines. So definitely there.
And Abed, I apologize. You told me what fan in Arabic means, but I've forgotten.
Yeah, Fanan means artist in Arabic.
Yeah, and you are an artist. PJ hasn't introduced himself, but I've known PJ since he was a kid. PJ O'Connor is an amazing individual. He's in his mid-30s. I can't remember how many kids he has. He has a whole troop of them, and he does everything. If we go ahead and actually acquire the farm in Metcalfe, and we do have it tied up right now, but if we go ahead and acquire it, I imagine PJ will be there for the next 2 years fixing it.
Whatever needs to be done, you know, I'll do it. It needs to be level, be framed, needs to be fine cabinetry, we'll get it done.
So PJ, do you remember what the Barndominium looked like when we got it back from the last tenant?
A nightmare is a nice way to say it.
Yeah, and what does it look like today? Quite a bit different. So I don't think I missed anybody. So I've got a few slides and I'm going to share that, okay? And stop me at any time if I'm going too fast or you have questions. All right. I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh yeah, that's my image generator. So let's go back here. All right, can you see my slides okay?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So one of the things I'd ask you guys to do is, this is a confidential conversation, all right? Anything you tell me or the group, will remain in here within the group. And even though I've recorded this and I'll put it on YouTube, the only people who will have a copy of the link will be the people on this call. Don't share it. Don't you know, we want to keep this as private as possible. So the very first teeny tiny town, and by the way, I did not come up with that name. My youngest son, Matthew, just started calling it teeny tiny town, and everybody sort of, I don't know, it just seemed right. So we call it teeny tiny town. It's actually in Dunrobin, Ontario. If you don't know Ottawa, it just is in kind of the west end where Canada is. So that's Dunrobin, Ontario is number one. Metcalfe, Ontario, which you'll see, I've got a map here in a minute, is about 20 minutes south of the Ottawa International Airport. So it's probably a little closer in than Dunrobin. And that would be the teeny tiny town too, I hope. And then Chris is based in South Florida, and most Canadians would like to escape the winter, at least for a period of time. So we hope that at some point we'll have a teeny tiny town in Florida. And then my wife and I own two 10-acre sites on a Gulf island off the coast of Vancouver Island. It's called LASQUETI Island. And we think that that should also perhaps be a teeny tiny town. And maybe there's other locations too. In other words, it's the start of a movement. For those of you, I won't go through all the details, but for those of you who've heard this before, I apologize. But my family has been involved in affordable housing since 1942. Not me personally, I wasn't born then, but my dad was involved with the minister that you see on the screen here, C.D. Howe. And between Mr. Howe, the minister, and my dad, who was an economist, they created what is now called Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And they built, in the immediate aftermath of World War II, 350,000, I'll repeat that, 350,000 strawberry box homes. Those were little tiny post-war homes. You had on the ground floor, you had a bedroom, a bathroom, living room, dining room, kitchen, and upstairs you had 2 bedrooms for the children. I'm a baby boomer, and the reason that I'm here is that after soldiers came back from the Pacific Theater and the European Theater, they were able to buy a house for $5,500. Think about that, you guys, $5,500. And you had CMHC guaranteeing it. So if you had 5%, which is $275 as a returning veteran from overseas, you could buy a house. Now try that today, all right? So I've been involved in this movement for a long time. Now, this is the picture. I just had to show it to you. You can't really see a whole lot on this particular photo, but here's that apartment building with the balconies overlooking the highway, and there's the light rail that's going in, and then that stupid sign saying connecting the city to nature. I mean, really. I mean, can you imagine sitting on your balcony watching huge trains rush by and semi-trailers? It would drive me insane. So I just thought, is this the best that humanity can do? So Katie, I used your word there. Is this the best that humanity can do? I don't think so. Milen, I promised I'd have a picture of you in here. And so Milen and I went out. This is me on the right, obviously. Milen and I went out to Hammond Hill to see what they were doing there. And then I got a picture of you, Abid, I guess at the Barndominium, and I found this, Victoria, I think somewhere on Facebook or something like that. So this is Victoria as an RMT, and this is Abid, who's the founder of Fanan Custom Cabinetry, artist. So I want to tell you how this all began. This all began, I'm going to show you the picture up here on the right-hand side. So this is a lake called Dunrobin Lake, which I excavated over a period of 17 years. I took out about 1.1 million tons of sand and created this beautiful, beautiful lake. And I built this barn, which we call the Barndominium now, which you can see the top right-hand side, I guess. I built that about 25 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And I did it one summer because I was bored. And it was just a huge barn where it was really a playpen for my kids. I have 5 kids. My wife and I have 5 kids. But kids have a nasty way of growing up. And so it was just sitting there empty. I rented it to a guy who was, I think, painting RVs or something like that. And as PJ mentioned, when that tenant finally moved out, it was a disaster. So with PJ's help and some others, we started to reinstate the barn, but I didn't know what to do with it. So what we did was we just thought, well, we'd create a few workshops, seeing if anybody needed a workshop, and it turned out that quite a few people did. And then one of my daughters asked me, hey, Dad, I've got a little side hustle. Can I have a workshop? And I need a place to live, right? Breaking news again, children are your children forever. They never seem to grow up. So anyway, so I designed with help from Dustin Poole, a beautiful 541 square foot, 1-bedroom home on piles, on screw piles. I went to the city, and I have the zoning on this for both residential and commercial. I went to the city on this, and they told me, here's the next screen. They told me, hey, Mr. Farstone, you have to do a site plan agreement. I said, I have to do a site plan agreement for a 541 square foot home. It's tiny. This is on 12 acres. And they said, yes. And I said, well, how much is that going to cost? Well, they said, we estimate in terms of fees and studies and time, it will take cost about $121,000 to do, and take 2 to 3 years, and we might turn you down. So at that point, I can't tell you in polite company what I said to them, but it might have been a 4-letter word or a couple of words put together. I said, there's no friggin' way I'm going to do that. So here's the Barndominium. Here it is. It's got a little overhead door here, and it's got, I think, 8 or 9 workshops in there, and of which, as I mentioned to you guys, Abed is eating them up. You know, we maintain the place pretty well. And one of the things that we do, and if we buy the farm, one of the things I would like to do there is we create our own waterfront. You know, I dug up that lake, which is 22 acres, took 17 years to do, mind you, and I dig up a lot of ponds. So if we have the right soil conditions and the right aquifer, we can create beautiful ponds. And I've got largemouth bass in all of my ponds. So that was what we did. We started to convert the barn to workshops. People started to show up. And then George and his wife, Brett, came to see me, and they had a tiny home. You can see it on the left-hand side here. And they said, well, could we park next to the barn? We have a couple of side hustles. Could we live next to it? I said, I don't know. Since I'm not spending $121,000 building a 1-bedroom tiny house. I guess you can. So they started to park here. Now, Ron, I think Ron and Michelle, you know that George and Brett said it was a tiny house, and then they showed up. This thing on the left here is 54 feet long. It's not a tiny house, it's a train. And they don't pay very much to park there, I have to admit. But if I were charging by the foot, they would pay me, I would retire. But here's a pretty typical use. You know, you've got a couple of side hustles going on. You've got a tiny home. They've got a garden. Obviously, there's lots of wood energy there. And they probably have some other stuff that I don't even know about. And then here's another typical side hustle. You know, they're not all young people. Some of them are older like me. This is Doug, who makes, believe it or not, guitars out of cigar boxes. So this is Doug. He has a workshop there. I think this was his workshop here, and there he is here. And then here's Abed in the early days, showing somebody what he's doing in the Barndominium. And there's the early days. The workshop looks completely different now. Abed is really into technology, and he's automated pretty much everything. But anyway, here's a little bit of a look-see. And then I think this is the one, we call this the Woodland Studio. I think that's the one that Victoria is currently living in. And here's my old hunting cabin. This was a hunting and fishing. I used to hunt and fish with my 2 boys. And this was my old cabin. It's been there for more than 40 years. And instead of paying $121,000 to the city for a stupid site plan application, it's like we were building an Amazon warehouse. We actually renovated this and created a very small house, which you'll see more of in a minute. That's where one of my daughters lives. And I think, PJ, did you work on that too? Maybe he's gone. PJ, did you work on that? Oh, but you got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, we're here.
PJ, did you work on this little cabin too?
I did work on the inside when we were doing like for organization and fixing up some of the mistakes that were made.
Okay, thanks. All right, and then again, here's a pretty typical sort of situation of a teeny tiny town. This is where one of my daughters lives, and then she moved out of the barn because the boys were too noisy. And I bought this workshop from North Country Sheds in Smith Falls. It's a beautiful little workshop. It's got an overhead door, a person door, a window, little deck that PJ and his dad built for me. And look at the pond it overlooks. So this is another pond that I dug. So my daughter, her commute is from here to here, which is about 40 paces, and she has a very successful business. And you can see inside the workshop here. So this would be pretty typical. So this is something that I think we would do with the farm. Again, we would build lots of these for people who have side hustles. And Jessica runs a business called proofcanada.ca. And she produces high-end clothing for fashion-forward women, mostly in the States. Now here's her little cabin. You can see it has everything. It has natural gas, it has heating and air conditioning. I mean, it's pretty small. And you can see the sign here. I like naming things. It's called Cabin in the Woods. You can see the site again. Here's Cabin in the Woods. And I like creating my own waterfront. Now look inside this thing. My wife and daughter, they spent hours and hours with PJ and his dad, Pat, working on this. It's got a little pantry here. It's got a full kitchen. It's got a good bathroom, full-size fridge. I mean, it really works. Here's the next one. You have to be clever with your design. You know, you come in the door, you hang your clothes up here. This is obviously a day bed, and you know, it works. Now, Jessica has a boyfriend. And he wanted to move in as well to the teeny tiny town. So he is now living about 40 paces away from Jessica in this thing. So this, Milen, you would recognize this. This is a Vanguard that was in, I guess, in Rockland, but we went out with Metro Towing. We towed it onto the site. And now Michael Swatton, a very cool Englishman, he's an actor, is living in this. We call this one Trail House. There's PJ with the sign, Trail House. I promise not to go on too much longer, you guys. This is just a picture of the other side of George and Brett's place. You know, this is the 54-foot long thing. And we call this, because it's so huge, we call it Big Bertha. Now, this one over here is what Ron and Michelle own. So they bought this from Humboldt Creek Homes. Milen, you've seen this picture, I think, before, right? And it has a loft up here. It has a bedroom here. It has a cheater ensuite. It has a kitchen here and a living area here. And they've added a beautiful deck and outdoor room. So that's if you can see my cursor moving around, that's an addition. And this thing is called the Noble. The loft is only about a 3-foot ceiling height, which would be fine for my grandkids to sleep in, but it wouldn't work for me. So one of the things that Ron and Michelle and I are talking to Humboldt Creek about is on the next version of the Noble that they produce would be to put a pop top here. So you get it, it can't be any higher because you can't go down the highway with something that's 20 feet tall. But you go down the highway, you put it on site, and then you crank it up and you've got much higher ceiling height, right? I mean, you'll see campers doing that, but you could do that with tiny homes too. So we hope that the next version will have higher ceiling height for the loft, which I think makes a big difference. We're connecting teeny tiny town. I don't know if you've seen this, Chris, but we're connecting teeny tiny town with lots of paths so that you can walk, you know, it's like narrow paths that connect everything so everybody can walk to see each other. These are just more pictures of Dunrobin Lake. And this farm that I'm going to show you in a few more slides is on the Castor River. And I suspect we'll be able to do something as well in terms of creating our own waterfront. So these are my two boys when they were younger. This is obviously a largemouth bass, and this is the subdivision that we built around the lake. Teeny tiny town is part of that now. So one of the things that we're working on, what are the things that go into a teeny tiny town? We're very new at this, really. You know, it's only been a couple of years, really. And what we think it makes sense is obviously, or at least on the property that we're going to buy, it has a farmhouse. It can have, under the zoning, it can have an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit, which could just be another tiny house. But what's cool about this particular zoning, which is AG3, agricultural 3, is it is by law, you can have 3 mobile homes or tiny houses. So in theory, I think we could have the farmhouse and 4 tiny homes and be legal. The other thing I've done is I have a good relationship with a company out on Salt Spring Island in BC. They produce beautiful domes. I was talking to Victoria, maybe at some point she might get herself a 4-season dome and she could actually run her RMT business out of her own dome. These domes cost about $15,000 and they're absolutely beautiful. What else goes into this project? Well, micro gardens. Micro gardens are small gardens that, you know, families typically can rent, where they can come onto the site and they can grow fruits and vegetables and nuts. And many people want a little garden where they can visit, but they also want a 3-season bunkie. And so that they just might have the micro garden, but they might also have a micro garden and a 3-season bunkie. So you could go there with your children, your friends, whatever, do some weeding and feeding, and then maybe have a beer and a barbecue. And if you had a couple of beers, maybe you don't drive home, you just crash in your own little bunkie. The Castor River is right adjacent to this property, so there would be some fishing in the Castor River and maybe some what's called wild swimming. It just means you're swimming, not in a swimming pool. Something that I think Katie is interested in is an animal shelter and maybe having some school visits. Obviously, we'd want more workshops, more small workshops. This I added myself because I think it would be very successful, which would be a farmer's market. If you had, say, 30 little workshops on this, you know, that is an inbuilt flea market. You know, people can come and get an RMT, or Milan, if you're doing some woodworking or handicrafts, they can see what you're doing. And then something else, Milan, that you talked about with me is the potential for some kind of a dog park. And I do have a couple of clients who run commercial dog parks that are quite successful. So that's a possibility. And there may be other uses. I mean, we have 27 acres. I mean, this is just my first draft. Now let's have a look at the farmhouse. So this is the farmhouse itself. I think, Tina Ray, do you remember if it has 3 or 4 bedrooms? I can't remember.
I don't remember either. I'm sorry.
Might be 4, Bruce. I thought on the listing it said 4, but
I think you're right. I think it's 4. Tina Ray, you're a lot younger than me. You got no excuse. But anyway,
I got a lot going on.
I know you do. I know you do. So you're moving, right?
I'm done. I'm in Montreal. I'm at my sister's. It all happened yesterday, so I got my brain back.
Well,
Do
have
some
a glass of wine after this is over.
What's that?
Have a glass of wine afterwards. You have my permission.
Thank you.
So anyway, here is the farmhouse. It's quite nice. The property is owned by a very nice lady by the name of Nancy. She is 82. And she's lived on this farm by herself for 10 years. Her husband passed away 10 years ago. And literally, she has not done anything. The building, everything around her is literally falling in on her. Right. So this building is a very nice building. It's well over 100 years old, but it needs work. It has issues. Here's just some more pictures. This is obviously the front of the building. There are 2 farm fields that were quite successful, I'm told, in terms of crop growing. So excellent for micro gardens or whatever, but they've gone fallow over the last 10 years. So they need to be reinstated. And this picture over here is not a very good picture on the left-hand side. I don't remember, Tina Ray, how long that entrance is, but it's got to be at least 200 meters, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's 300. And to me, that is really, really great. This thing is very, very, very private. And I really like that aspect. And that's one of the reasons why I asked everybody to keep this confidential. It has instead of having a drilled well, it has a dug well, which is just like an old-fashioned oasis. You know, you go dig till you hit water. So there's plenty of water, but I'm not sure if this long-term is going to be the solution. We might end up with a drilled well. There's this shed here, there's a workshop here, and this of it, if you can see it, is the barn. It doesn't look like much, but when you come out to visit the farm, if you have time, it's incredibly deep and it has that L shape. It is fantastic, and I believe it can be saved. Then here is the zoning on the property. You can see that this is, I'll go on the left-hand side, which is the aerial photograph. Here is the Castor River. If you can see that my cursor moving around, that's the river. And this property does not include that portion of the river. I imagine that belongs to the city. So this is the 27 acres here, and you can see how deep how far away from the road the house is, the farm field, the other farm field here. All very good. On the right-hand side, if my memory serves me, I think there were cattle. On the left-hand side, I think there were horses. So that's a good thing. This is an AG3 zone, which is very, very permissive. It's probably the best zone. It's better than rural. It might even be better than a residential zone or an R1, but it can never be developed as anything other than a teeny tiny home. If somebody wanted to pave this over and put 20 houses here, that's not the plan, and we wouldn't be able to do it anyway. On the right-hand side, you can see there's the zoning. It probably is too small to read, but it says AG3. I'm almost done, okay, guys? This is the map here. So Abed, it's close. It's about 30 minutes to Orleans. It's about 15 minutes, I think, to Barrhaven, maybe 20 minutes to Barrhaven. It's probably 30 minutes to Canada, and it's 30 minutes south of the Ottawa International Airport. And there's the aerial photograph again. You can sort of see there's the river here. And so you can understand that I think it would be possible to create another pond down here, right? So you could have something really special down here. That's my thought anyway. All right, almost there. Okay, so I did some numbers. We had hoped to buy this property, Chris and I and the group, for around $600,000, just over. It was a competitive situation, so it was considerably more. It's the agreed on purchase price is $675,500, but that gets you 27 acres, a farmhouse, and all the other stuff. To close the deal, there's land transfer tax, almost $10,000, probably at least $3,000 of legal fees. So closing will be about $688,000. And then I just spitballed. Again, please, if you notice, it says draft here, please. You understand, you know, there might be $85,000 worth of repairs. I know the septic field needs work. And one of the things, Ron, are you still there? Ron, are you there?
I am.
Yes, we are.
One of the things that I'm going to get you to do, if in fact we go ahead with this, is you're going to be in charge of getting quotes, you and Michelle, because I am the worst I'm very good on the revenue side, everybody. I'll create amazing revenues in every project that I'm involved with, a business or real estate, but I really suck on the cost side. So Ron and Michelle are much better at this. But anyway, I put in $30,000 for the septic field. We need a couple of outdoor bathrooms, $8,500. I'm not going to go into detail how to do that. We're going to create at least 4 parking pads for tiny houses. And I put in here, Ron, $22,500 for each one, right? You have to have the gravel, you have to connect it to the water, the electricity, and the septic system.
Okay.
This is my suggestion. That people don't like it, tell me. I think we're going to put an automated gate on this thing. We do not want the public in here unless they're invited, right? So if Katie did, I don't know, a petting zoo or something like that, and children are coming, yeah, they'll get the passcode, or somebody will be down there to open the gate and let the children in to see the petting zoo. But we don't want just people, nosy neighbors driving in. So I think it'd be just an automatic, maybe it's a punch code, might even be something that these days you can probably get an app and you just punch the number in your app, the gate opens.
Yep, that's good.
So I think that's, and then I think in our, this is phase one, right? I mean, there's a whole, I mean, we could spend a lot of time thinking of other things that could go on in here, but initially I thought we'd also create some small gardens because people really enjoy that. I have a client out in Orleans. He has a farm, Mike Milson, and he every year he sold out of his little micro gardens, and he makes a ridiculous amount of money doing that. So this is just my numbers. You know, I don't really think that they're, you know, I could spend another week analyzing this, but what I said to everybody, or at least the people that I've talked to so far, if you want to participate, if you know, Chris is going to form a company to buy this, it'll be a company. And if you wanted to participate in the company as an owner, not only just as somebody who's going to live there or work there or whatever, but if you wanted to invest in the company itself, you could. And I just came up with this number. We're going to probably raise about $550,000 of equity. The minimum amount of equity I said to everybody was $5,000. So that works out to 0.9%. So if you wanted to participate, I think you should. You know, it's a relatively small amount of money. If you wanted to invest more, if you wanted to invest $50,000, $100,000, that's fine. We need to raise the money. But the minimum would be 5,000, and that would get you just under 1 point.
Can I ask a question now or later, Bruce?
I've got 2 more slides.
Okay.
All right, and I know, Mylène, you'll have a million questions. I spent 2.5 hours with you. I know that. I'm gonna give everybody. I'm gonna put in the chat box for everybody a link to a book I wrote. It's called Twilight Zone. You'll notice it says zoned as opposed to Twilight Zone. And the reason I added the D on it is so I wouldn't get sued, right? But this is a book that I'm gonna give you all a link to it. You don't have to pay any attention to it, but it's something I think you should read if you want to. I created a genre of novel called learning outcome novels. I think I created it. Where I'm trying to tell a story, hopefully that entertains you, but also teaches you something. And this particular book has a lot of my ideas and thoughts on real estate and politics and some of the other things that are important for us as we go forward with this group. And one of the things that is very clear in this book, it's a novel, learning outcome novel. One of the things that's very clear in this book is that I think zoning has really been a punishment, especially on young people. If my dad were alive today and Mr. Howe, the minister, was alive today, he would kick everybody's ass. He would kick the mayors across Canada, the United States. He would kick the state governors and the provincial premiers. He would kick presidents and prime ministers for not producing enough housing for our young people and to some extent for our elderly as well. I don't know if anybody on the call here is thinking when they retire, they can hardly wait to go into a 12-story retirement residence where you don't see any young people and it's a vertical warehouse where you go and you wait to die. That is not I'm a lot closer to that age than anybody else. That is not what I think is the right solution. So anyway, if you want it, I'm going to put it in the chat box after I finish here. I'm going to put that in the chat box. And the last thing, I promise this is the last thing I will talk about, is if you're interested, towards the end of this month, I'm going to start a course. This is a short course. It's only goes for an hour and a half, 5 times. So it's a 5-week, hour and a half, where I'm going to talk about a lot of the stuff that I'm dealing with right now. It's called Backyard Oasis, and it's how to build a beautiful but cost-efficient backyard bunkie, as an example, backyard workshop, and many other aspects. I'll certainly go into a lot of detail about the teeny tiny town. And it starts on September 19th, and it's from noon until 1:30 Eastern time. and then every Thursday thereafter until we finish with one break in there. So it's an hour and a half. And it'll be a really good course, in my opinion, and something that might be worthwhile. I am actually still working for a living, so I do charge for the course, but it's $650 plus HST for the course. But for this group, it's $325. I just decided to chop it in half if anybody would like to take the course. So I'm going to put those two links in the chat box. Obviously, Twilight Zone is free. If you want to join us, you know, and me, we'll have a really interesting 5 weeks. All right, enough. Okay, over to you guys. I guess, Mylène, you're next.
I was just wondering, in terms of the group of investors, is it on the table to raise the equity? I think you said 550,000. Is it on the table to bring outside investors that are simply investors in this venture?
So I would ask, you know, I think Chris and I did a little bit of analysis, and I think the cap rate, for those of you who don't know what a cap rate is, it's kind of like the ROI, is going to be around 9 or 10%. You know, it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be, well, we could always make it 13, 14, 15%, but we'd have to double everybody's rent. And, you know, we don't want to do that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to have the company have a decent return so it can pay its bills and make some money and hopefully go up in value. Let me answer it another way. Mylène, the Barndominium, it cost me $245,000 plus another $8,000 for some other stuff. So it's about $255,000. I put in time and effort into it and some money. And it was recently valued at $1.6 million. Okay. So I do think that this thing will go from $600,000 or $700,000 in value to quite a bit more.
Yeah.
You know, I have experience with these things, and maybe it goes to 1.6 million, but it also could easily go to $2 or $3 million, and maybe even $3.5 million. That's the range. So I think it will appreciate and it will make money, but would an investor be happy with 9 or 10%? I don't know.
Okay, I was just asking whether it, you know, the sort of investor that you had thought about, whether it would be outside investors or people like those around this call now who have an interest in actually participating, living there, and so on
I
and so
would be
forth.
fine
So it was
with
just a
I would be fine
question.
with outside investment as long as it was patient capital. You know, if they want to get in and out in 2 years, you know, it's just the wrong thing. You buy Bitcoin, I guess.
Okay. And another question, unless somebody else has a question to, you know, we can tally, go back and, oh, I think, it's George?
Ron.
Ron.
Ron,
Yes,
sorry.
I have a question, Bruce and Chris. If I wanted to invest, I am in a business. I make so much money a year, but like if the minimum is 5,000 to start, and I wanted this year to put in 5,000 and next year maybe put in 10, is that possible?
Well, you know, I would think yes, because we're going to be raising capital for probably 3 to 5 years. You know, like think about all the things we can do with the farm. Rome wasn't built in a day, Ron. So I think the answer is yes. You know, the idea is, can we raise enough money to close the darn thing and to, you know, make sure we get our tiny homes there and we get a few micro gardens going and we fix the farmhouse. But you know, fixing the barn is going to be another $150,000, right? So we're going to be raising money for a long time.
Yeah, and the other point I wanted to make too, Chris and Bruce, is that yes, that's great if we could do that. And I had a point now, I forgot what it was, but yes, we would also probably want our tiny home if we were to sell ours on that property, so we would be living there as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well. I would like to explain something to everybody, with your permission. It was Michelle's idea. So Michelle, I'm going to disclose something that you actually taught us. And by the way, we have one more guest that came. Luke St. Pierre is here. Hi, Luke. Luke, are you going to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it. I tried to do the shortcut, didn't work.
All right. So Luke is a
Yes,
good
sir.
friend, and he owns a tiny house, which is I think currently at Hammond Hill, but he's thinking about dragging it from Hammond Hill in Rockland the way I did to Dunrobin, but in this case to Metcalfe. Is that a fair statement, Luke?
That would be a fair statement if things don't change quickly.
I would imagine so. And Luke's a family man. 2 kids, right, Luke? You and Jen?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And you've met Ron and Michelle, right?
Yes.
Yes, we was just talking like, is it here?
Yeah, we were just saying it's right here.
Yeah.
It is, yes.
And of course, Luke, you know Tina Ray as well. So
Yes.
Michelle asked a very, very good question. When you put a tiny home the size of the Noble in place, you probably don't want to move it. You remember their Noble has that beautiful
Yep.
deck in the outdoor room, and then they have the shed there, and they have everything there. So they have a long-term lease with me. I think it's 5 years. And
Yes.
so if Ron and Michelle were to sell their Noble, they could, and it is their principal residence, they can probably make close to $100,000 in gains on that. So in order for Ron and Michelle to get ready for retirement, which for Michelle is 20 years away, but for Ron is closer.
Oh, yeah.
That's true, by the way. Think about this, you guys, just so you understand how these economics work. If Milan, I'm not saying you would do it, but if you bought a Noble or some other tiny house, you park it on this site or any other site, and you have a long-term land lease, and you do a nice job, nice garden and nice deck and all the rest of that. And it's your principal residence, and you sell it and you make $100,000 profit. That doesn't go to our company, it goes to you individually, right? I said and Ron and Michelle said, well, Bruce, can we do this over and over again? I said, I actually have worked with former students of mine, architectural students and business students, who I encouraged as young people to do this. This was 20 years ago now, to buy a house, that needs a little bit of work, fix it up, sell it, make a bit of money, do it again, and then do it a third time. In Canada Revenue Agency, I don't know how the IRS would treat it in the United States, Chris, but in Canada Revenue Agency, you can generally get away with 2 or 3, I don't want to call them flips because it's your principal residence, in a period of 4 or 5 years. You could probably get away with it. If you did 2 or 3 a year, okay, that would be business income. You're going to pay tax on that, all right? But if you did 2 or 3 over a period of 4 or 5 years, that's fine. Most people think you need to hold on to your house for a year before you can sell it, but that is not the case. I did check with Steve Shepard, who's my real estate lawyer, and Steve told me there is no minimum period. I went through this with Milan, Ron, and Michelle, and let's say Victoria, you buy a nice house, and unfortunately you lose your job or something like that 3 weeks after you bought it, and you can't make the mortgage payments. Well, you sell the house, and because of the pandemic, during the pandemic, the prices were going up like crazy. You make $100,000 in like 2 months. That's still income tax free because it was your principal residence, right? You just can't repeat it over and over again because it becomes business income. So if Ron and Michelle decided to sell their existing tiny home, buy another one from Humble Creek or whomever, put it on Metcalfe, they could do it again and again if they wanted to. Up to a limit. All right, so that's enough for me. Any other questions, Katie?
Well, so I have lots of questions because I'm very curious just around, again, developing up a little tiny town. Like if we're doing something, that hasn't been done before, I wanted to clarify few points that you mentioned just about, I don't really want a petting zoo, just some things around that. So I basically traveled, we are in the same cycle as a post-war, right? We're the same cycle as actually post-Vietnam. All right. Addiction rates are up. I mean, alcohol is part of your grocery order, pot shops everywhere. So addictions back then, here, just throw in the cell phone. I mean, all these screens, things, everything. They called it shock back then, just insert PTSD, trauma, whatever kind of word you want to say. It's the same sort of cycle. What's different though this time is really creating something that's different. So looking at different models that are actually working so that people really break out of a lot of indoctrinations of actually what it means to live here in the West. All right. So yeah, living here in the West, we've got to figure out the money system, right? Which means we need to actually have, we need to change the way we do business and currency. And so it starts small. It does really start small, right? You have to have a change within the heart, which then is a change within your family, which then is a change within your community. And so there's a few places I traveled through the states because parts of the states and the pockets are recovering better this time around than a lot of Canada. You're exactly bang on with Ottawa. All right. But just insert Kingston, Belleville, go through these places. They're not recovering well, which is why I went through the states just to see. And I'm not sure if people are familiar with Lilydale, which is a hamlet, which is, it's got a year-round population about 275, but each year they open up to the public for a certain amount of time and take in about 22,000 visitors over their summer months. So they really have a few months of solid work, and then they live their life very much how they want to live it for the rest of the year. Because I think that's what we're saying is we want to have a little town. We're welcome to make, money, but I'm not so sure I want like busloads of, people coming in all the time or things. I brought up the sanctuary just because there is a sanctuary here that as a general income they make collectively, it's 350,000 that they bring in. People show up then to give them trucks, like vehicles to be able to use. Like they just walk up the driveway with a check for like $50,000. They don't want their name on it or anything. PETA is basically starting up to bring back a certain goats from New Zealand. So they're funding the entire project of the fencing and things like that. Like I believe we use these corporate structures or these old paradigms in order to fund, the new what we're doing. However, like there's so many things that that come up, like the address, just to give you a heads up, 3369, that's the God frequency. So if you want to bring up a really great unity kind of tone, like that's the address of the place. You've chose a barn. A barn is a very safe symbol, right? It's refuge, it's safety. My community is based on the Lighthouse Collective because people would, if they're coming in, they didn't know where they were at sea, they could find the lighthouse, or if they were having dark times, they would show up. So symbols are very important. So just the fact that, we need to change. People are not so good with the cross. They're not so good with the religions. They're not great with schools either, right? Because those have been a complete indoctrination here in the West as well. So I just wanted to kind of plant some things about like the community that I'm looking to be a part of. If we create not just a town, but create a model that can be replicated, and you've got, Metcalfe, I've got South Florida, like whatever. There are thriving places that are working in the world that you can build. You called it educational learning. There's a whole tourism based on that, of the educational tourism, where again, why I bring in Jeanette here with the Embrace, like people don't typically travel here to Canada, to spend, say $7,000 for a beautiful week in, the countryside like they would in Tuscany. But why not? Why? We have a beautiful place that we can create something that could also be like a tourism, like a national tourism, which people, again, it's contained. They're coming in a certain time. We're all on board. Like who I choose to do business with is who I'm going to choose to basically be in family or tribe, or, I don't use community even because that even people have been ousted. A lot of these communities do not work. right? Because they're focused on a lot of differences and separation. So using anything land-based, nature-based, that doesn't matter if you're from the east, the west, the south, the north, wherever you're from, nature is a really big part. Really simple things about just even music and dancing, and whether you call it meditation or prayer or devotion or just sitting in sanctuary, whatever that may be. And then also enchantment, like imagination and creativity, allowing people to come in and actually have an experience where they're actually creating as well. So it's not just, I guess what I'm saying is I know what we're thinking about, how am I going to be in a house and how am I going to do all this sort of stuff? But to me, I'm interested in a real collective movement. Basically, though, it has been historically men who will provide and protect the culture, right? You use wolf, which is like fantastic, but it's the women, like basically, who are going to be, so come back to our feminine, come back to actually the family unit of raising these children. We need to be looking at what we're doing for our children's children, right? Of really looking that way. And so a lot of women, just to give you a heads up, like if they have anything, they give it, right? If I'm having my food and my children, but I mean, animalistic wise, not so much with men, but men have done really well with money. So we need to have men also teaching women how to become very rich as well. Because I think a lot of the time when we go spiritual or things like that, we think that they can't make a business or money. Anyways, that's all I wanted to kind of say, but I'm gonna.
That was really, really good. My language is the language of business. Your language is the language of humanity at a different level. I get that. You're never going to get that language out of me. That's my training and background. But I did take notes as you were speaking. I muted myself so I could type without driving everybody crazy. But that was really good. When you talk about somebody coming up the lane with a check for $50,000, I call that sponsorship, just to put a name on it, right? I am the king of sponsorship. When I ran the Ottawa Senators, we were generating, I don't remember exactly how much, but something like around $22 or $24 million a year in sponsorship. That's a long time ago now. It's back in 2004, 2005. We generated more sponsorship than the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. They're now called the Ducks of Anaheim. Anaheim is one of the richest counties in the United States. So I missed that. Like I just added to our slide deck the stuff that you just mentioned. I think the experiential learning, I mean, if you think about Victoria with RMT work and you with some other kinds of things that you do, and I'm sure the other people on this call have their own things to contribute. I have something to contribute too, in the sense that I'm a very good real estate investment and business coach, right? Different. So I think that was very, very helpful. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Those were great comments. Victoria?
Hey, I really enjoyed that, Reverend. I think that there is incredible potential to scale up, to model and scale a community for every facet of humanity within this framework. And, not just within, I think, the spiritual frame, but in the very humanistic frame of getting back to the most underrepresented in our society and providing education outcomes for them should they choose that. Thank you. You sparked that that recognition of what is possible through all the things that you just said. On a more pragmatic note, I'm just curious, Bruce, when do you see it viable for us to start moving in?
So I'm just looking at the agreement of purchase and sale, and there's some mechanics that we have to talk about. I think the closing date on this transaction is in November, because this lady, Nancy, has to pack up after she's lived there for 45 years. I think, yeah, I wanted the closing date to be the 25th of October, but she moved it back a month, so it's the 25th of November. So, you know, and you know, there's some work to be done on I mean, the house is livable. I mean, right, Tina Ray, it's livable, but it needs work. You know, the basement is damp. There's some bats in the attic we got to get rid of. I mean, there's stuff that has to be done, right? So I don't know. I mean, the 25th of November is when we get vacant possession, and then do you want to move in the winter time? I don't know.
I can see how that could be a challenge.
We would be better off, Chris, in South Florida. You don't have the winter to deal with.
Yeah, right. You'd be sweating out, but yeah, it's true. A little bit easier from that standpoint.
For sure. But to be honest with you, Victoria, I really actually quite like the weather in Ottawa. I know a lot of people hate it, but I like it. I was in Brisbane last Christmas, visiting with my wife, visiting our oldest son and his family. And it was, of course, their summer in Australia. And it was horrible. 99% humidity every day, rained every 15 minutes. We got suspended actually for almost 10 days. We had, this is unbelievable, we had 3.71 meters of rain for 3 days. Every road was washed out. I was there with 2 little grandsons, no power in the middle of nowhere in Brisbane, South Queensland.
Wow. As a recovered Torontonian,
Yeah.
I am enjoying that the winter is actually winter here rather than sludge.
Couldn't wait to get back to winter, but I guess that's just me. So I don't really know. I mean, I think Tina Ray and Katie were thinking of maybe living in the farmhouse. I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess just for my own personal reasons, wanting to plan out when the transition might be made, because I'm launching my own business, and I just want to know how much do I invest my effort into being here right now versus how much do I look ahead and calibrate accordingly.
It would make a lot more sense, I think, to plan a spring move rather than a winter move. By the time Ron and Michelle, get everything organized, the parking pads, the connections to the septic field, the septic has to be repaired. Golly, it'll be next summer.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate the industriousness of that. I was more concerned that it was going to end up being like a couple of years down the line.
Oh God, no. Oh no, we'll be broke by then.
Well, we can't have that happen.
I have a few questions for you, Bruce, if Victoria's done.
All finished.
Yeah. You had said that the property is tied up, so I'm wondering what tied up means. I'm wondering if there are any conditions on our offer. I'm wondering if you're thinking that we should create a co-op board, and what next steps and deadlines are, square footage per tiny house.
Yeah, so I'm only good at doing one thing at a time. Ask my wife. She thinks about 10 things at a time. I think about one. So the first question that you raised was what?
You said the house is tied up, so
yeah, okay. Well, we tied up Nancy. We held her down and forced her to sign the agreement. That's what it means.
Loved it.
Isn't that right, Chris? I mean, you were there.
Yeah, we had to. Yeah, we were there. Yeah.
Didn't do that. She's a lovely person, really. You know what I told her, Tina Ray? Were you there when I told her that? No, you weren't.
No, you told her that before we arrived, and maybe this is a good opportunity to tell your blind donkey and goat joke.
Well, I'll tell the blind donkey story. I'm sorry to keep everybody going, but when I had a chance to talk to Nancy before and after our inspection, and I said to her, my very first girlfriend when I was a young teenager was Nancy. And she said, well, my husband's name was Peter. I said, oh, now that's a bad memory because my girlfriend at the time, Nancy, ran off with my best friend and his name was Peter. Right? So there you go. So Nancy, so what was the question? Shit.
You tied her up. You tied her up.
Okay, we tied her up. Okay, how do we tie it up? Okay, so what we have now is we have an agreement of purchase and sale with conditions in it, right? Okay, and it's conditional until, we don't have very long. I wanted a longer time, but it's conditional until 5 p.m. on September 11th. So Tina Ray, I was just making a list of the conditions, and so between now and the 11th, what I was hoping, but now you're in Montreal, maybe it won't work. I was hoping you could help me with some of these. On the financing side, Chris O'Connell, you're talking to Sean McCormick, correct?
Yeah, I just talked to him today.
How'd that go?
Yeah, it went fine. We'll have an update. He's just getting a few offers. He said he would have all of them finalized by Thursday.
Okay, so Chris is working on the financing, and Tina Ray, you said you don't want to over leverage this property, and I agree with that. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to probably have $400,000 or $500,000 worth of financing, and the rest has to be equity, right? That's kind of what you said. Chris O'Connell is working with a mortgage broker by the name of Sean McCormick. Then Tina Ray, you asked whether this is going to be a co-op. At this moment, I put in the agreement of purchase and sale just because of this is where I come from. I put in the agreement of purchase and sale that it was Chris O'Connell in trust for a company to be incorporated. So the company could be a non-share capital corporation, right? If you know what that is. But my recommendation to this group is it should be a share capital corporation. And the reason for that, Tina Ray, is if it does appreciate the way I think it does, you and everybody else who might be investors, me and Chris, should benefit from that, right? If it's a non-share capital corporation, it's run by a board of directors, and the increase in value does not go to the individuals who are there. It just goes to the corporation, right? And it stays there. It's locked in. Do you understand, Tina Ray?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So I just thought for the people on this call, that it should be a share capital corporation. All right, so that Victoria puts in 5,000 and Luke puts in 5,000 and Chris, you put in 200,000. And other people put in some money. Okay, if it goes up, as I hope it will, maybe to a few $1 million, that each individual will benefit, right? You have some shares and they're worth more. Okay.
Yeah, got it.
That's my thought.
Okay, just I am in Montreal. I'm back in Ottawa tomorrow for a day, and then Katie and I are both gone for 5. So perhaps we'll talk about how I can help in the next few days, or conditions.
Here are the conditions that we have to satisfy between now and the 11th. A building inspection, a soil test. The soil test was to see if the soils are any good for farming. I'm sure they are, but it would be nice to know, right?
Yeah.
We want to take a water sample. Nancy told me that she has a water treatment system in the house and the water is fine, but we should test it. We should get a septic inspection done. We need insurance, obviously, for the property. I'll take care of that. So in terms of what needs to be done, we need to do the insurance. I'll take care of that. I have a wonderful insurance broker. Her name's Kim Coker. She is fantastic. For my Barndominium, I had a quote of over $1,000 a month for my stupid barn, and she got me a quote for $1,800 for the year. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So instead of paying over $12,000, and by the way, I went to Farm State, right, which was my insurance company, and I asked them to insure the Barndominium, and they said, "Oh, we don't insure barns." I said, "Isn't your name Farm State?" And they said, "Yes." "And you don't insure farms or barns?" "No." "Okay, fuck you." And I hung up on them and I moved to Kim and, I mean, I'm sorry about that, ladies, I apologize. So anyway, I'll take care of the insurance. Chris, you'll work with Sean on the financing, but I need somebody, I don't know who would have time to do it, to actually go on site with a building inspector and check, get the water sample, get the septic inspection done, get the building inspection done. Yes, Milan. Milan, you're muted.
Yeah, it was one of my questions because I still have a couple, but what can I do? So I'd be happy to do that because I'd also like to go out to the property.
You are my new best friend. That is one, thank you, because I'll be honest with you guys, I am completely overwhelmed right now in so many ways with work. And I really, really appreciate it. Tina Ray.
Bruce, I could probably meet over as well. I'm just 20 minutes from the property. So depending on when it is, when we set it up, Milan, I could join you as well.
But you're the day after tomorrow, I think Tina Ray said.
Yeah, it just depends. A building inspector might not be able to do it until what, maybe even, just depends. Like, you know, when we get the building inspection, but I'll have to say I can help out dropping off water sample, whatever.
That is.
I may need some guidance on what needs to be done because I don't know where you are in all of this, but Katie, I'm happy, you know, you and I can work on that. If you know a bit of the background, then maybe you and I can touch base after this.
So everybody, I think, is connected by email, right? I mean, I think, you know, everybody has everybody else's email address, all right? So so Milan, you can reach out to the Reverend and vice versa. So
I might be able to find the time too, if I'm given guidance. This is completely new territory to me, but if I can be more of an asset than a burden, I'm willing to do what I can.
Thank you so much, Victoria. So what we need to do, and Milan, I'll put you in charge with the two other ladies, with Victoria and Katie.
Okay.
We need a building inspection. All you need to do is bring a shovel, and we need to test the soil. There's the Ministry of Agriculture and Food will do that. I think it's free. We need a water sample, which we could get from inside just by running the tap. And we need a septic inspection. All right, so building inspection, soil test, water sample, and septic. Now, the water sample.
Yeah, I know where that goes.
So the City of Ottawa, Milan, City of Ottawa gives out these things for free. All right, you can go to any city office and they give out these things for free. All right, and they will test the water for free.
Oh, okay.
So you can go to the client service center. That's what they call it. That's only a bureaucrat would ever call City Hall a client service center. But you can go to the client service center. You can get this free water test kit. You go inside and you have to run the water for at least 10 minutes. Just let it run. And then you take a sample. That sample has to go pretty much right away or within an hour or two to the test center. And you can't leave it in the sun. Because if you leave this in the sun, you know, bacteria will just like that.
I understand.
And the test will fail.
No, just make sure that you are not touching the, what's the code?
Yeah, if there's a screen on the end of the tap in the kitchen where you're taking the water test, make sure you take that screen off.
Okay, good point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the water test is simple. It's just a potability test. They'll screen for coliforms and E. coli. All right. So that we know that if we drink it, we won't die.
I got it. And for the soil test, you said agricultural.
Yeah, the Ministry of Agriculture, I think, has a testing center. Milan, you'll have to do some homework on it.
Yep.
And if I had the time, I would.
It's fine.
But
the
Ministry of Agriculture will, if you just get a jar and you fill it with soil, and
Yeah.
they'll tell you what you can grow in it and what you can't grow in it. I suspect it will be just fine. So water sample, soil test. The building inspector, I've got to think about who would be the right building inspector, but what might be best would be to find somebody in the Metcalfe area. So maybe you could just,
I've already put a call in just to check in, unless you have someone that you want for a building inspector or in the septic. So I'll get that information and then pass that along to you, Milen.
Thank you. Okay.
and one more thing I'm going to do, Milan, is after this is over, if it's okay with Victoria and Katie and you, Milan, I will introduce you to the realtor for Nancy. Because he will have to tee it up with her when it's convenient for you. I don't want to be the meat and the sandwich. I'll delay you for days.
No, I understand, and that's really helpful, because if all this needs to be done before the 11th, and we need to coordinate already within 3 people, that sounds like the best way to go ahead.
4, you can include me in there too, Bruce, because I'm 2 hours away, so include me there.
All right. I told Tina Ray she was going to be a voluntold.
So I don't understand. So Tina Ray, you'd like to come with us as well?
If I can make it, yeah. If I have enough notice, yeah, I would like to be there. Definitely.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
And Hasti and Jeanette, Hasti, I think you're in Toronto.
No, I'm in Ottawa, like half an hour from Katie.
Okay, and Jeanette, you're in Toronto.
No, I'm in Ottawa too.
What do I know? So I mean, I'm not saying you should do it, but Jeanette and Hasti, if you wanted to visit, the time to visit is when everybody else is there. So, if you wanted to visit, if that's something you want to do, you should do that. And Ron and Michelle, if you want to visit too, you guys are connected together now, all of you. You don't have to go through me. Like, it would be better not to.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Evenings
So
are good.
If everybody is okay, I'll find out the availabilities and whatnot, and I'll share with you any possible times to see what would be the best. Is everybody okay with that?
That's great.
That's great.
Yes.
Okay.
So I really, really appreciate, I mean it. I love you guys. I mean, I do. I love where you guys are going. I do. And Katie, as you said, I think this is a model that is our model. Okay. There are many, many others out there. I've seen, 100 of them. I know Victoria has sent me some, and Chris and I have looked at some, and I'm sure there's 1,000 examples out there, many of them very good. But this is ours. And I'll give you one last example. 2 quick stories. Well, I hope quick stories. One, a friend of mine who was a world famous architect fell on hard times. And he came to me because I do a bit of coaching, as you guys know. And I won't mention his name because he's world famous, but he had fallen on serious, serious hard times. And he's an Indigenous person from out west. I won't mention which area. An Indigenous person, famous, and a fantastic architect. Well into his 70s, fell on very hard times. And he had one piece of land left, a lot that I had sold him near the Barndominium. And Victoria, I don't know if you know it's there, but it is. And he had this, fortunately, in his wife's name, so it couldn't be included in a bankruptcy. And I asked him what he was going to do next. He didn't know. I mean, it was very difficult times. And we talked a little bit more, and he told me a story about when he was in his 40s. He's now in his 90s, but when he was in his 40s, he was very, very sick. And he went back to his tribe. And the elders immediately knew what was wrong with him. They put him in a sweat lodge for 3 days. No food, no water for 3 days. He was sweating out all the poisons that we eat from our processed foods. It was like green stuff coming out of his pores. And at the end of 3 days, he didn't die. he felt better. And they said, you have to go back to an indigenous diet that we've been eating, you know, berries, and nuts, and fruits, and things that grow in the forest. You have to do that. And you can't eat McDonald's burgers. I'm not picking on McDonald's. It's just, you can't eat processed food. Your body can't process it. You're poisoning yourself. So he talked to me about the sweat lodge training. I said, this is great. You have that property out in Dunrobin. You could teach white people about sweat lodges. You could build one out there. He said, no, I can't. It is incumbent on people who know sweat lodge traditions. We can't charge for that learning. So Katie, we can't charge for that learning. That's what he said to me. I said, oh, I didn't know that. As a white guy, what do I know? So I said, well, could you charge for accommodation? You know, could you do some glamping sites around, charge for that and give them free sweat lodge training? He said, oh, that I can do. So he and a young disciple of his built 8 glamping sites, which they would charge like $250 a night for. And they do sweat lodge training year round. You can go in February. I do not go in February. It's too cold. I go in June or July. But, you know, that is the kind of thing that we could do at the farm. Those are the kind of people who will come there and share their learning with white folks and other folks. And there are business models we can wrap around it so that, because we need money to live, but we can also be true to the traditions. So that's one story. And last story, before we go, I promised to talk about the donkey and the blind donkey. So one of my clients, Carol Lee, operates an animal shelter out west. And one day the police show up and they say, listen, we found a blind donkey wandering the highway. Would you be able to take the donkey in? And Carol Lee said, that's what we're here for. Yeah. Well, the police officer said, well, I happen to have the donkey in a trailer and I'm going to bring him in. So he did. And so immediately Carol Lee takes the donkey into one of her pens where there's a baby goat, tiny little baby goat. And she puts the donkey in with the goat and they bond. And I went to see Carol Lee about a year later, and she shows me in the morning, because I'm an early morning person, she opens the pen. And by this time, the baby goat is huge. Like, I've never seen a goat this size. I mean, it looked like it was 6 feet tall. It was huge. So the blind donkey puts his snout on the back of the goat, and the goat leads him out into the pasture. And they frolic around all day doing whatever they do. And at night, when it's time to come back and get fed, the donkey puts his snout on the back of the goat, and the baby goat leads him back. And he's not a baby anymore, he's an adult. And they are bonded in a beautiful, beautiful way. And I have pictures somewhere on my computer about that. And exactly as you said, her revenues, Carol Lee's revenues she does do school tours and she has a tremendous amount of sponsorship. It's exactly the same number you used, Katie, this is a few years ago, $350,000 a year. And that's my goat and donkey story. All right, so everybody, so right after this call is over, Milan, I'll introduce you and Katie and Tina Ray and Victoria to the realtor. His first name is Justin. I've forgotten his last name for the moment. I'll do that right away. And I really enjoyed this. Chris, any last words from you?
This is great. And everybody's energy is awesome on this. So I think we can make this thing work with this team.
Sounds great.
I'm looking forward to meeting everyone
Thanks
officially. Yeah.
I have a question, Bruce, before we cut. Are we going to have a follow-up meeting? Because I, along with Victoria, have some more pragmatic questions and in terms of the timeline. Yeah, I know. So I don't know if it might be possible to set up another, perhaps a quicker meeting than today.
In other words, tell me to shut up, right?
No, it was all really great information. It was also great to share and get to know people. I'm not saying that it was time wasted. I just am saying, in the interest of not, everybody's busy. I don't think we need to spend as much time today to address some of those things.
I agree.
I agree. Today was a bunch of stories, and to be honest, every project that I've been involved with, building a 20,000 seat arena, founding the Ottawa Senators, doing the Barndominium project, the teeny tiny town, everything is ultimately an act of faith, Millen. I will do my best. I know Chris will, and everybody on the call will, to answer all the questions. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it isn't a spreadsheet that will tell us that we should do this. That will help us, but
Yeah.
it's whether we have confidence in ourselves and faith that the project will work. Ultimately, that's what will decide whether we go ahead.
That is not where my concern is. My concern is, you know, we go ahead and just how much and when to free up capital, sort of plan. Is it, you know, in November? Is it in the spring? It's those sorts of timeline
I
questions.
do understand that, and
Yeah, okay.
so what we have to focus on right now is the conditions, because
Okay.
we have till the 11th.
Okay.
It's not very long. I asked for longer. She refused because she wants to buy another house. So we've got to get into a position where we say, yeah, that we're reasonably confident we can waive our conditions. And
Okay.
then between the 11th of September and the 25th of November, we can have a whole bunch of meetings, and I'm sure we'll need to.
Yeah.
Like if Tina Ray and Katie or anybody else want to move into the farmhouse, let's work that out. If Ron and Michelle decide to sell their tiny house in Dunrobin and buy another one and do it again, maybe, I don't know, something like that. There's a whole lot of detail. And you got to remember, everybody on this call is wearing two hats.
Yeah.
One, as an owner of this company, and two, as a tenant, right? Right?
Correct.
So you're basically paying rent to yourself, but they are two separate entities, right?
Yeah.
Ron
Yeah.
and Michelle have a nice, you know, version 2 of the Noble, and they're renting the land for $600 a month or whatever. They're essentially paying the company, which is partly owned by them.
Yeah. Okay. I got that.
And
All right.
hey, last thing, remember what I said. We're trying to get a 9 or 10% return for this company, but not 15 or 20%. So the rents will be, I hope, a little below commercial, but not zero either, because the company will die.
Right.
All right, but
Which
yeah,
makes-
we'll definitely have more meetings, okay?
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Bruce, could you just switch the host over? Milan and Victoria, if you've got like just 5 minutes to stay after, and then and also Tina Ray, is that possible? And then just to.
Can I make you, I can make you the host, Katie.
Sure.
All right, I gotta go.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, perfect. I see Victoria. I see Milan. I see Tina Ray. Oh, okay. Hatsi and Jenna. Okay, perfect. So, I just sent a text to my girlfriend to get the septic coordinator and then also the building inspector, but that'll be totally based on just when they're available. So I don't know if we necessarily will coordinate if we can be there. It's because it is true. Tina Ray and I leave on Thursday, and we're back late Sunday night. So I don't want to hold any of that back from happening. So I'll get the information of who to book, and then you guys book it. I would say based on Milan and Victoria. Hasti, you're gone as well. So, you know, Jeanette, if you want to go out and see the property as well, and then keep us informed, because if Tina Ray and I can, of course, we will jump in on it. But I think it's going to be just based on when we can get the building inspector and the septic.
Of course. And just I can be very available. So in the interest of time, I think who are you going to contact the inspectors, or are you going to give me the info to contact them?
We'll just get the info, the one she's going to give me and then I'll pass that along to you, because you'll be booking them and you have to be there when they're going to be there.
Exactly. So I'll just make sure that at least one person is there, even if we need to have a second visit so that we can all see the property and whatnot. But I'll just make sure that at least one person is there. I'll send out the availabilities suggested and see who can come at the earliest convenient time for all. Okay?
Yeah, I'm just gonna put my cell phone in there so you guys can and then put yours in there, and I'll just that's probably quickest there. 9782555. Okay, and then Bruce, just I guess while you're on here, I think the building inspections, I don't know how much it's gonna cost. I feel like it's probably for both of them, it's gonna be about $1,000. So I just don't know. I'll let you, Milen, and figure out that how you like do it. I'm just gonna go. Does everyone have an Android or is it a
Android.
Android.
iPhone.
All right, so then I'll do a WhatsApp, I guess. WhatsApp, is that the best kind of group to do?
Sounds
I
good.
think
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Great. Okay, I'm gonna take a picture of this of Victoria.
Well, let me put mine in as well. Oh my God.
It's a new community. It's a new community. Okay, we'll call it TTT.
TTT2.
Yeah, TTT2. Okay, and then perfect. And then like, oh, of course I've got to add a group. Okay, so I got to create a new group. We're gonna be TTT2. Okay.
I'm wondering how quickly we can have the results back for the soil test and the water test. Because I was thinking perhaps we could take the water test at the same time as the building inspection is being done. But time is of the essence, so
It can be done pretty
does that-
quickly. It's easier if you do it just while while they've got access to the property, because you're gonna have to go, Bruce, you're gonna put the realtor, connect the realtor to Milan, because you have to connect that when it's, yeah. Okay. Oh my God, why did I not have Jeanette? You probably are faster at doing these friggin'.
How quickly did you say the water test is done?
The water test, once you submit it, it's you can get it done like within 24 hours. It's quick.
Within 24 hours? Okay. If I'm looking at my schedule, if need be, if it makes sense, I could do tomorrow, or Thursday and Friday. I don't get off until about 4:30, so it might be out of the bounds of conventional hours. Monday or Tuesday, that's too tight. So
Well, can I suggest this, Victoria? Why don't you let me find out first with the realtor, see, because we can't just walk on the property without giving a heads up.
yeah.
And then we'll see if we can coordinate everything with one visit and everybody, great. If not, I can go just to get the samples, or, you know, we can divvy up who can do what when. If that's okay, but
Yeah, of
I
course.
just want to get the information in terms of the timelines, the availabilities, and then we can coordinate after actually being on site. Because I just don't think she would appreciate having a bunch of us go in and out and in and out. So we'll do our best. If that's
Thursday
okay.
morning would work best for Katie and I and Husty to if we could get the septic inspection and the building inspection done Thursday morning. Does that work for you guys? If it's even
Victoria,
possible?
does that work for you?
Yeah.
No. Husty?
Yes,
Yeah.
it works for me. Yeah. Thursday morning, yes.
If it was possible, Katie, would you be able to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So Milen, once Bruce gives us the intro email, you're going to reach out to the building inspector and see when we can schedule that ASAP?
Well, I'm actually going to contact the building inspector as soon as Reverend Katie gives me that info. And then once I get the timelines from the inspector, I'll contact the realtor to schedule something with the owner.
I'm gonna
Okay.
actually suggestion. I think Milan, I'm gonna wait until she gets back to me, but we might actually be better off to get that once you get the realtor, she's right in the Metcalfe area as well.
I was thinking of that. Yeah, she should be able to give us a recommendation, and we do want somebody that she or he, I don't know, would know, Justin, Justine, I'm not sure, but that would be the route that I would go, because they often know who the good inspectors are.
Well, and I just
We'll
think
do
that
that.
air of time or the kind of essence of time and being able just to get somebody local to that. So then Bruce, if you just connect Milan, I will send other information as well once I get it back as well, Milan, if the building inspectors can't do it by the timelines we want.
Okay,
Right.
Bruce just introduced us all, so I'll follow up on that after this call.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll create a little group then within WhatsApp that then we could probably just finalize the timing with what comes up.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
That's how we'll communicate going forward, is through the WhatsApp, not email.
I feel like WhatsApp just for these kind of like things to get done.
Fast, yeah. Okay.
Makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, ladies. I have to go.
Me too.
Let's close.
okay.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch, and I look forward to meeting you in person.
Me too. Me too.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so we're good then. We're good. See ya, Hosty. See you, Jeanette. See you, look at you. Look at all. I'm just so happy about seeing all these beautiful faces. I feel like I should send you guys the podcast I just listened to because it's totally talks. Well, we watched and Jeanette and I watched it last night about just being actually in the presence of men who are doing negotiations around money and getting women more comfortable. The more women we get who are rich, and actually because they get the reciprocity project, they get it. The more that they give, the more that it's that figure eight, So I think it's really wonderful. I'm looking forward to having. I believe we should probably get Bruce and Chris to potentially do a coaching call, like to actually empower women to have conversations around negotiations and things, right? Just get us more comfortable with it, and making big pitches and deals and stuff like that. Because I'm like, yeah, let's do this one. South Florida, yeah, I want to travel there. Like, why wouldn't we go over these other places too? Woo, woo.
Would you include me in your sending as well, in your podcast share? Because I'm really interested in that.
Send it to me too. Guys, I gotta go. I have another call I have to be on, but I'll see all of you soon, okay?
Thank you a lot. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.